Skill-based matchmaking literally has to be one of the most tried and tired conversations of all time when it comes to PvP games. And not only that, it's probably one of the most divisive topics when it comes to shooters only. I don't know how something so simple like matchmaking can divide a community to the point where there are people who prey on skill-based matchmaking's downfall. And today I will be throwing my hand into the ring, throwing in my 2 cents, whether you like it or not, goddammit. Because as a person who loves the competitive aspects of PvP games, the topic of skill-based matchmaking is something I truly care about. One of the biggest areas where skill-based matchmaking is discussed is within the shooter genre. Shooters take up a large portion of the competitive and casual gaming sphere, from super popular games like Fortnite and COD, to niche games like Guns the Duel, Platoon, and Deadlock. That even counts as a niche game anymore. Even though all these games are fundamentally different, they all share one thing in common. They all have a competitive scene. Whether you like it or not, PvP games are akin to sports. And just like a real sport, you could play casually or you could play competitively. No matter what, the goal is still to win. No real person is gonna hop on the game just to lose. This is why there needs to be a divide between players of different skill levels. No matter the player's skill level, you still want them to have a fair and equal chance of winning every single game. So for the people who are saying skill-based matchmaking was only there to protect newer players, yes, that's quite literally one of the positives of having it. Obviously, the best way of making sure everyone has an equal and fair chance of winning is through a ranking system. What a ranking system is supposed to do is maintain a competitive balance between the player and their opponents. And I hope this is not a crazy thing when I say that is a good thing. Would you rather only play games that end in landslides or games where both teams are neck and neck the entire way through? The only thing that really happens when you have players of equal skill level going against each other are better matches for everyone involved. Lower skill players who are trying to get good at the game still can get a taste of real competition without being stomped on by higher skill players. PvP games are literally built around balance, and the balance between competitions should not be sacrificed either. But now looking at another genre of video games that are highly competitive are fighting games. For years, it seems like they just can't get the matchmaking thing right. It feels like every year they come up with some new crazy idea or revert back to some ancient process when it comes to their matchmaking. Now, it's not really their fault due to how niche fighting games can be, but like a popular game like Guilty Gear Strive can afford to have one uniform matchmaking system, but instead they chose to use a tower system, where your MMR rating dictates what floor you can be on. But if you're feeling cocky, you can just go up to a higher level than you're recommended. Makes perfect sense, don't it? Although admittedly, the tower system isn't perfect by any stretch of the means, it is a good representation of what skill-based matchmaking should be like. The only difference is that your rank is clearly communicated to you and shows you what players are protected from players of your skill level. A lot of the fighting games I play don't have a conventional matchmaking system, and if they do, they don't get used too often due to how niche the games are. So it's better just to go into an open lobby. Now, open lobby systems can be hit or miss at best. You don't understand how many times I walked into an open lobby just to get my shit rocked by some random guy who's been on the game for 10 plus years. And depending how old or niche the game is, this is all you got. And sure, you can make the argument that putting players in this kind of environment fosters some sort of competitive nature and growth, but I feel like 9 times out of 10, the average player is just gonna not want to play no more. Just going 0 and 20 against one person is just demoralizing, because it doesn't feel like you're making steady progress to your goal of getting better. Fighting games and shooter and any other PvP game are best enjoyed with environments that are competitive but equal. One of the main arguments people make against skill-based matchmaking is that it favors a casual audience. The quote-unquote casual audience are people who don't really care about getting good at the game. They are perfectly fine not knowing the details of how a game functions or its mechanics. They are there simply just to experience what the game has to offer, and in your eyes they might not even be seen as gamers for real. They only got like 20 hours max on any multiplayer game. If it's a single player game, they're never gonna play past the credits and all. And in all honesty, there is nothing wrong with that. Enjoy media however you want. Just don't try sharing your opinions online. Like it or not, the casual audience takes up a majority of the player base. And because of that, games are usually designed for this audience in mind. Just look at Fortnite. You think any serious player wants to sit down and deal with Epic Games trolling, dealing with another weapon or mechanic that is clearly busted? Like, I know these pro Fortnite players be going through it every time a new trailer drops, but it is clear as day that these trailers are not meant for them. These trailers are meant for the mass 80% of people who hop on once in a while, maybe buy a skin or few, and then dip in 3 weeks. Tops. I do remember back in the day when people were saying Fortnite was falling off because the game wasn't fun anymore. And this was all because the skill ceiling just got way too high, way too fast. And this is around the time Epic Games didn't have any bots or any semblance of a skill-based matchmaking system. For the average player that just wants to hop on and have fun with their friends every once in a while, they're getting dropped off left and right by 14-year-old white boys with too much time on their hands. So the casual audience simply stopped playing, because who wants to go against that when all you're trying to do is relax? Like, if you don't care about being good at the game, why even fight these kind of players? Hence why the casual audience simply just never came back to the game after leaving. But this is not exclusive to Fortnite. Every PvP game goes through the same cycle, no matter how good the game is. The game releases or gets popular out of nowhere. A large group of people start to play said game. The casual audience gets bored and moves on to something else, only leaving the truly dedicated players left to continue to get better at the game. Now, there still will always be a casual scene for the game, but it will get smaller and smaller over time. Now, this is another wave of interest in the game, like Fortnite and other games do with each season. And in my opinion, this is exactly how it's supposed to go. The dedicated players are your real fans. The game is not dying just because the casual audience doesn't want to play the game no more. They were never going to stay in the first place. When a game starts actually dying is when those dedicated groups of players start to leave, because the game has gone too stale or just is bad now. And without those dedicated groups of players, there is no one showing potential players what can be done in the game. Even though they might not be skilled enough to do whatever they're doing, high skill gameplay looks very enticing to the average player. So without those good players, new casual players simply won't join. Looking at a game like Apex Legends, you don't see a single player on the game that actually enjoys it. No one ever says how fun it is, they just always complain. Now, do you think you're gonna want to play that game if you don't want to play it in the first place? No. So that is an example of a game that is actively dying. For new players joining a game, they obviously belong at the bottom of a ranking system. There's no reason why they should be going up against more competent players. That's just going to drive them away. But as time goes on, those casual players will turn into dedicated players, and then they will be able to compete at a higher level. It's never going to be healthy for a game to treat all their players as if they're on the same level, because they're just not. And if you do that, you risk falling for the same trap Fortnite did like 4 years ago. And even if you're a dedicated player who's competent at the game, there will still be people above you. These people are the top of the ladder when it comes to skill. They know all the ins and outs of the game, how to fully manipulate each mechanic of the game to break it down to its simple code. Like it or hate it, these people are also necessary for a PvP game to survive. They can supply dedicated and wannabe dedicated players with information about the game that might not be readily available or readily obvious. And let's say you're an above average player, you still probably don't want to go up against the best of the best, because it just wouldn't be fair. The only reason why you ever would want to is because you want to learn from them. So is it really crazy to say there should be some sort of effort into segregating the player pool? A lot of people online will say, well, not in casual play, let's leave it for ranked play only. But I feel like casual play is one of the best areas where you want to use it. And you might be asking, what's the point of casual play if you're just going to have skill-based matchmaking in it? The biggest difference is in casual play. The skill-based matchmaking doesn't have to be so precise. If you start losing 1 or 2 games, the game could just put you in an easier lobby instead of you having to lose like 30. And another positive is you don't have to adhere to any other extra rules that might come with a ranked playlist. Like in Marvel Rivals, there's a lot of rules that stop you from playing cross-play with PC players if you're on console, if you want to play the ranked playlist. And in Call of Duty, there's a lot of stuff that just goes unused in ranked. And a lot of people don't want to deal with having half the weapons available just disappear because they want to play a more competitive environment. In casual, you don't have to deal with those kind of restrictions. And another and one of the more important things is the invisible MMR. And this is one of the biggest things that can be misused and hurts skill-based matchmaking's reputation. A lot of people who hate skill-based matchmaking don't even realize it's always been there, and that's one of its biggest strengths. It's just working in the background to make sure your games are as fair as possible. There's only like a few games I know, excluding fighting games, that don't use skill-based matchmaking, like Battlefield 4, which I will touch on later. But one of the worst games for skill-based matchmaking was Call of Duty Cold War. This game has done irreversible damage to the perception of skill-based matchmaking. It has one of the worst implementation of the system that I've ever seen in a video game. For context, I was playing for like 1 or 2 weeks during a winter break with a 4-6 stack every time with very competent players. So I was already expecting to be playing against higher skill players, but that's just not how it goes at all. The skill-based matchmaking makes it so every 4 games you play are exactly the same. 2 completely easy games and then 1 to 2 completely unwinnable games. If you're lucky, the 4th game will actually be close. And that was simply the script for the 4 games that we played. Because our ranks were hidden from us, we had no idea what was actually going on with our rankings. And like why we were being bounced around like this. It was like our MMR was constantly swinging on a pendulum. And I feel like this was more like an engagement based system. Now stay with me, if you lose too harshly, you're more likely to want to play the game again because who wants to end on an ass whooping? Now if you're doing the ass whooping when you're at the high of your power trip, or when you have one of those really close games, and after 3 games of that not being the case, you're going to want to play again until you take another ass whooping, repeating the cycle. When 3 out of the 4 games are statistically unfair, that 1 out of 4 games you play feels special and makes you crave more. Now I think that's the cycle they want to keep you trapped in. That is just my conspiracy though. After the shit show that was Cold War, the developers actually tried to make something that resembles a real working matchmaking system. In Modern Warfare 2.2.2 and Black Ops 6, your rank honestly doesn't seem to drastically change like it did in Cold War. It feels perfectly fine and well tuned. But for some people, they still think this is bullshit. Why shit? I don't know. People's main argument is that you can't pop off anymore. Nobody's popping off because everyone's on the same skill level, which I beg your pardon, I swear that is not the case if you actually play. And I applaud these people who are making these arguments to actually play the game. Even if everyone was struggling to hit anything above a 1 KD, that literally means that skill-based matchmaking is doing its job perfectly. The lobby should not be ranging in all types of skill levels. As long as the average MMR is equal on both sides of the team, that is perfectly fine. And like I just said, it clearly isn't, because there are people who can still pop off in pub lobbies. But for the sake of an argument, let's just assume everyone's struggling to crack 1 KD. To play devil advocate, I can understand why some people have an issue with this. It's because you might not have a good game on an individual level anymore. The Call of Duty franchise has built their entire multiplayer system on the principle of an individual popping off. Being good at the game is directly rewarded with killer score streaks. So if you're struggling to get that gunship or even a UAV, it feels real bad. This is in direct contrast to what was going on in Cold War, due to the matchmaking swinging back and forth and the way the score streak system worked in that game. So yeah, maybe with a stricter skill-based matchmaking system, you have to sacrifice the COD experience for better team balancing. So you can maybe see where the general community gets off for saying they don't like skill-based matchmaking, because the systems of the game don't reward players for playing a better game. In a public lobby, you will never see your rank. You have nothing to brag about besides your KDR. But getting rid of skill-based matchmaking, as some people like to propose, would not be it. Maybe what these people actually want is a looser skill-based matchmaking system and not get rid of it entirely. The way people talk about it now, you're only playing with players between a small range of your MMR. Now this definitely works if you're trying to foster a competitive environment, but looking at the popularity, the general public just wants to kill people in TDM. But for somebody like me who likes those objective-based game modes like Domination and Hardpoint, skill-based matchmaking works perfectly. Only 1 out of my 4 games end in a landslide. So yes, you could admit you want a looser version of skill-based matchmaking, but villainizing the system just because you like the competitive edge that PvP games are built around will get you and the game nowhere. One-sided matches are never fun. Keeping the teams fair and balanced will have a positive effect on your enjoyment, I promise you. The real problem with skill-based matchmaking is not the matchmaking itself, but its implementation. And if you personally think skill-based matchmaking should be removed from games, you are way too far gone, and it's time to wrap it up. Now for the people who say, oh, I play a few games and it feels like I'm going against SEAL Team 6 the next game, I don't know how to break it to you, but that's low-key how MMR is supposed to work. If you win, your points go up. If you lose, your points go down. If you keep winning, your points go up and up and up. And once you lose, it knocks you back down to where you're supposed to be. The game doesn't just stamp you with a rank and leave you there forever, because that simply wouldn't make any sense. Take a game like Pokemon Showdown. Every single player starts at 1000 elo. If you so happen to lose, you will lose elo. And you will keep losing until you are where you're supposed to be. If you win and keep winning, you will keep winning until you are where you're supposed to be. That is how skill-based matchmaking works. Now, are other games matchmaking so simple as Pokemon Showdown? Probably not. But just because you win a few games and the game suddenly becomes harder, doesn't mean it's a bad thing. That's just how it's supposed to work. It's when the game's matchmaking starts to swing you all around like in Cold War, and that's when the MMR system needs to be reworked. Now, I did want to look at it from a different standpoint, because of course everyone plays these games for fun, but everyone's enjoyment comes from different processes. Doing camo challenges can be a person's fun, so it can be a little demoralizing to be put against people your skill level when you're handicapping yourself. And this goes beyond COD. These challenges will occasionally ask you to put yourself at a severe disadvantage. So of course you don't want to go against people of your same skill level, but this is where our looser MMR system helps again. If you're putting yourself at a severe disadvantage, you will lose games until you get to the point where you're in lobbies where it cancels out. So unlike in your average rank mode, the game has a lot more flexibility when it comes to the matchmaking in lobbies it can put you in. But if your ranking doesn't seem to move at all, then it's just gonna get frustrating for those players who just want to grind camels sometimes. And this is why your MMR needs to be loose enough where changes in your gameplay can have an actual effect on your ranking, but not too loose to the point where you're being bounced around from toddlers to FaZe Clan back in their prime every 4 games. But on a tangent about how people villainize skill-based matchmaking online, I'm mainly looking at people who use it as a buzzword, like some dude named H2 on Twitter. I think he's some YouTuber, who were playing BO6 during their private beta and complaining that the game was too sweaty. Yeah, no shit, ugly. The player pool literally consists of only people who pre-ordered the game. These are the people you're going up against. Yes, the game is going to be harder than it is normally. Skill-based matchmaking did not do that to you. People who are ass at the game will proliferate this narrative. Oh, the game's too sweaty, it's too hard, I can't compete with anyone. Tryhards are killing the game. Modern game is going to be dead if everyone keeps trying. And then the clip they show is just somebody diving on the floor, as if that's just not a basic mechanic of the game. It's clear as day that these people online really aren't competent players in the slightest. And instead of taking accountability and saying like, this game looks too hard for me, I just don't want to play, they rather blame it on their favorite buzzword, skill-based matchmaking and tryhards. But now this community of players have evolved and started implementing new terms like skill-based damage and skill-based hit registration, which if you use your brain for more than 2 seconds, you can see how that doesn't make any sense. That literally sounds like one of the most complicated things to ever implement into a video game, and why do that if skill-based matchmaking already exists? I don't know how we got to the point where we're making up conspiracies for why there's connection issues instead of just blaming the company for having bad connection issues, as if there's something more nefarious going on. This is just all a massive excuse that Big Loser Incorporation has adopted. If you're looking for that casual experience that those real gamers are really talking about, look no further than the open lobby system. Now, depending on the game, open lobbies can be good, but for the most part, they're simply not. Like I said before, a lot of fighting games have an open lobby system. But since we got off the topic of shooters, let's look at 2 good games. Those games being Battlefield 1 and Battlefield 4. Now, I do got a preface when I say I hold these games near to my heart. I grew up off these games. I bought my first DLC with money I found on the bus. I've since fallen out with the franchise due to obvious reasons. But these 2 are some of my favorite games, especially Battlefield 4. For those who are unfamiliar with these games, they're both 32v32 players on large maps, domination style, for like 5 flags, maybe 6, maybe 7. To actually get into a game, most people just go through the server browser. I mean, anyone could join any game at any time. You can even switch teams if you need to, nothing but straight freedom right here. And due to there being 64 players on each server, there's a wide variety of players that you will go up against. In contrast, you can see the inherent problem with fighting games. One high skill player against one low skill player will play out the exact same every single time. But in Battlefield, a low skill player can still win some of their games, just off the variance of the games alone. Even in shooters with smaller matches like Call of Duty or Overwatch, there's still room for one player to become too dominant. But in Battlefield, the average competent player will most likely not kill everyone in the server, even if they get 32 kills, even if they get 64. Now, there are some times where one player will get into a vehicle, mainly like an attack chopper, stealth jet, LAV mobile AA, and just dominate the server. I'm like in 3 deaths to like 120 kills. You know, some absurd. If you play any Battlefield game, you know exactly how annoying these high skill vehicle players can be. And due to how large the maps can be, if you're getting dominated in one area, you can simply just go somewhere else. This is why having an open lobby system just doesn't matter when you're playing Battlefield. The player count and maps are so big, there's a lot of in-match variance that could lead any player to enjoy the match however they want. Now you may be thinking, Battlefield seems so cool, I wish I could play Battlefield. But what if the teams are stacked and then everyone on the team just leaves the server? And this happens like all the time. This is how the average Battlefield server dies out, due to having one-sided games, causing players on the receiving end to leave in frustration, and then the enemy team due to a lack of players. Some privately owned servers have a system that rearranges the player pool every time a match is over, sometimes based on performance, but mainly random. These are obviously in place to stop landslides from happening over and over again, killing their server. So yeah, those systems are still not perfect. There needs to be a level of intervention needed to maintain a level of fair and enjoyable play. And to end on that note, if you want to play a fun casual shooter with the bros, I beg you to play BF4. Anytime they have it on sale, it's dirt cheap. Even after all that, there's still going to be some people who say why there needs to be skill-based matchmaking if they just have a ranked mode. And I promise you, a large portion of the audience is not playing the ranked mode. Let's stop the act. Especially for casual style games like Call of Duty and Battlefield. All this really does is split the player base, which could already be done by a real skill-based matchmaking system. The only difference is the game just doesn't show you your standing. And obviously this is done to protect people's egos so they don't hop off the game after losing too many times. I don't think a lot of people know this, but Rainbow Six Siege's unranked mode, where you play with a ranked rule set without being ranked, it's still ranked. The game just doesn't tell you about your rank. The only real difference between the matchmaking is that it prioritizes getting you into a game faster by sacrificing a little bit of matchmaking accuracy when it comes to your ranking. But all this really does is make wait times longer because now there's a third place for people to queue up. You have casual, unranked, and ranked. A lot of people, especially in the COD community, wouldn't even play ranked if they had it. They just assume it's going to make the game easier for them because they don't have to play against competent players no more, which would not be the case. And I honestly don't think it's going to be coming back for BO6. At the time of writing this, it literally got announced. Like deadass, I checked Twitter and they say, yeah, this shit coming back next month. I'm like, bro, what the fuck? And I actually played it and it doesn't fucking, it's not good. Like, it's boring. They took away all player freedom and it's just, yeah, never mind. I'm out of here.